It's the state of the dungeon! It's a video that Rob does about his games. Yeah! Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the second episode of The Darkest Dream, our second play session for the Red Star Rising campaign. Once again, I am joined by all of the players that we expect to have. My wife Melissa, Chrissy, Brendan, Neil, and of course, Greg. Playing the characters of Vanessa, the druid, Brandel, the wizard, Hananan, the fighter, Glyn, the ranger, and Creighton, the bard. And as we progress forward, the group had already started to kind of stick their nose into things as the roving patrol and security for the Blue Veil troop of the Hanataz, the roving, unwanted peoples with no homeland who travel around and entertain at various places that they visit. And that's how they make their living, also adding to their troop by taking on the unwanted, the diseased, or those who suffer from a magical ailment called the blood touch, which gives them interesting powers but warps their flesh. So the group, all told, were in the presence of the master of the troop, the Bravda, named Borag, who charged them to, for their day's work, go around and make sure trouble just didn't happen or got taken care of quickly. That started with a bang because they were almost immediately attacked by a large drunken bear. They destroyed the bear pretty effectively, and nobody was seriously injured. Although a guard was injured, he was healed by the group's cleric Braden. That is the Hanataz group. He's not an adventuring party member. And the group then kind of went about on their ways, going around through the area, finding suspicious people where they could, and doing a little light shopping at the local merchants. Eventually, their trails took them around. They wanted to talk to Borag again to kind of get his idea on what they should do about these groups. They've been hearing about the Shiners, who seem to be troublemakers, and one of their members, who supposedly is running around the caravan trying to sell his pork products. A very suspicious character. They've seen a few suspicious characters already. They're also being doggedly hunted by Smedley, who's a young boy who watched their bear fight. You could say he had a front row seat, and has been enamored with the group and has been kind of hunting them and kind of holding them in idolatry of how awesome they are. So they eventually met with Borag, who just urged them to be cautious and to keep an eye on things. They went and got a snack, and that's where we started the next session. The group had talked amongst themselves about what they should do, and really kind of determined that they should find out more about where that bear came from. It could be important. It could be a threat to the troop. So they used their rangering skills. Actually, Glyn could have found it blindfolded. The bear left a very obvious trail through the woods about 300 feet to a shack, which was clearly broken into by the bear. The door was cast off its hinges. The lock was smashed. And inside were barrels and barrels and barrels and barrels, mostly broken, but they clearly had held aging liquor, spirits, and not good ones either. Basic rank moonshine. And they were looking through the effects. They also found a dead body outside of the shack, who had been clearly mauled by the bear. Going through his pockets, they found a short sword, dagger, and a pouch. Inside the shed, they were poking around, and they found another bag with some money in it. Clearly signs that this place had been relatively undisturbed until this bear came along. So, eventually the party got around to opening the pouch, and they found out there was a letter in it and a map. The letter was not written well, but it suggested that bad things were afoot. It also had a map to another site that they were interested in locating, to an old well. That piqued their interest, certainly. So they returned back to the caravan, eventually talked to one of the senior members of the troop, who was serving liquors to the various customers, and she told them that they should probably tell the guard if they found somebody dead, so that it didn't come back to get pinned on them. Any number of people would blame the Hanatas for murder. So they found a guard, and Creighton was quite smart. He brought them a mug of water each, because they'd been standing out, by themselves. He brought them some cold, clear water and told them about the murder. And the guards were suspicious, but they sent one of their number along to go and investigate. And he confirmed what they said, basically. He is a bit slow. He was very much on the thick side. But even he could see the guy was killed by a bear. And that the shack had been broken into by the bear, and that all the stuff was destroyed, but he knew that it wasn't from the Hanatas. So they were cleared. Before he could press them into moving the body for him, they vanished. So, good adventuring there. They got back to camp and decided that the map was interesting, but they had their duties to the troop. They had to keep doing their job. So they went back in and basically took a right as soon as they went through the entrance. Came to the food tent and spirits. And again, the food was fine, no problems of any sort, although they were warned by the brewmistress that there's a stranger running around that really doesn't look good. He's a tall human with a mustache and an eye patch, and she suspected something. Also, she heard some people talking about how some people were getting sick off of local liquor, and that seemed to jibe pretty well with what the group had found in that shed. Also pinning it on this group called the Shiners. Seemed to be fairly credible. They also found the symbol on the tattooed on the chest of the dead man, as well as on the door of this grinning imp face with two barley sheaves crossed behind it. They figure that's possibly a pretty good tell. So they continued on their rounds, really. They, first of all, they went to the Tent of Illusions, because that's basically the next place to go right after the food wagons, which clearly there was nothing untoward going on there. And as soon as they got there, one gal, basically she's mute, but she rushed up to them. They knew her. She's a member of the troop. And she was pleading with them to follow her to get to the Tents of Illusion. So they followed her quickly. And there's two tents. There's one in which the wizards of the camp, the senior wizards, Skizig and Vestia, conduct their magics. And while they were doing that, this other tent, which is known as the Tent of Glamors, is an actual minor artifact. Anybody going through there sees things that aren't there. They're only illusions. They're meant to entertain, amuse, maybe terrify, but everybody gets a personalized view through the landscape as they go through. They get charged, they come out the other side, they were entertained, hopefully. Well, there's a lot of worried people looking around, and they are met by old Sten, who is one of the elders of the group. He's a storyteller. Now a little too frail to be able to do anything with the troop in an actual performance aspect, but always there for a good story and a spot of cheer. He warned the group that something got into the tent, and it needs to get out. It's not good to have people with coin getting hurt going in, or possibly killed. And since they're the troubleshooters, have at it. So in they go, and in came my favorite part of the actual adventure, the game so far. They went through a trippy landscape with all kinds of exotic locations, looking like something out of an acid trip. The landscapes were trippy and surreal, giant mushroom forests, a stone bridge with a dancing kind of Leprechaun meets Grateful Dead, following tour. And as they get to the stone bridge, they get attacked by a pair of giant badgers. Badger, mushroom. And with the badgers, they fought, and unfortunately, Glyn went down hard. He was in the back of the group, you see. And even though he is, he's a ranger, so he can fight, he got savaged early. The rest of the group's response? We'll shoot at the things, but he's tanking them. He's doing fine, despite the fact he's bleeding all over the place. Everybody, including the fighter, I'll stay back and shoot. Everybody else, stay back and shoot. It was vicious mockery. And poor Glyn just got shredded. He dropped, bleeding and unconscious. In the next wave. At this point, the group's reaction was, we're going to keep shooting if we can. Now, fortunately, the druid had cast Entangle on both of the badgers, and one of them was affected. Then a sleep spell was cast, and the entangled badger was put to sleep, so he is well and truly not doing anything. The other badger was enough to take poor Glyn down, however. Finally, an arrow strike from Hananan drops the badger before it can do any more mischief, so it dies. There was a heartwarming moment where everybody was very concerned for Glyn. By that I mean they were immediately tallying up their options, thinking about how to kill them, and then, oh yeah, he's bleeding. So there was a couple attempts to stabilize him. They failed until Brandel came up with a healer's kit, which he has, and made a really good roll. Brandel was hot early on. She was rolling 20s and doing really well. So she got him stabilized. And then Vanessa cast Good Berry, and she started feeding him berries, and that got him up. And actually healed him up to 10 hit points, so he was okay. Not at full. He's a tough ranger, but, he's much better than he was before. And the other badger, well, they were going to just finish it off the old-fashioned way. Hananan took out his sword. He's got a nice long sword. He walks up, whoosh, attacks. Automatic critical on a defenseless opponent, basically a coup de grace, but he didn't kill it. It wasn't a very good damage roll, and the creature survived. It was mad, it woke up, and since there's Hananan right in front of it, it was ready to go frenzy on him, but it was dropped and killed. So, the badgers were dead. Glyn was revived. The group was, okay, that was a badger fight. That was nasty. But they continued on. The funny little man had given them just a little bit of a warning to watch their backs, but because they chose to just kind of step around him, he didn't give them an advance warning enough to avoid the surprise attack. So he vanished. The group continues along the path. This time they get into an evil, spooky forest. Very evil and very spooky, as it turns out. The art for it is amazing. And if you get to see the live play, I'll show it to you. But, evil, spooky forest, they were attacked by 12 wolves. Now, these wolves were weird. They looked like 12 wolves, but the wolves were actually shifting and mingling amongst each other. And the wolves weren't acting like there were 12 wolves, like a whole pack that could surround the group. Instead, it looked like only a few wolves that were attacking and had a bunch of body doubles. Magic was afoot. Brandel couldn't put her finger on exactly what it was, but yeah, magic was afoot. So, they started fighting. It didn't go well at first. Hananan took a nasty bite right off the bat. Didn't fall from it, but it did maximum damage and really, really hurt him. But to his credit, he stuck it out and used his sword rather than run to the back and use his bow all the time. His sword he does more damage with it, and he's generally more fit than everyone else, so he's good at being tanking, but he likes the bow, so cool. But he's using his sword and hits a wolf. The wolf goes, pop! So not all of these wolves are real. There's several illusionary wolves. So, that worked until, of course, there's still all these wolves that seem to be attacking. Mostly they concentrated on Vanessa, who moved up with her sickle, so she got attacked. Hananan had one that was basically on him from the beginning, and then eventually one had kind of peeled off a bit and was primarily going after Crendon. Going after Glyn. So Crendon found out that his Vicious Mockery actually could hit the wolf and it would not affect the illusionary ones. So that helped. Also it distracted the wolf, so you don't have to understand the language, you just have to be able to hear it. And yeah, the wolves can hear quite well. So he bothered one wolf. Then Glyn lit one up with his scimitar, just laid a vicious blow into the beast, and badly injured it. So they knew that there was real ones in there, and if they hit the real ones, all of the duplicates would seem to have it. So that wasn't even a good measure to tell which one was the real one, to make the fight go faster. It just came down to pure blind dumb luck. All told, they ended up destroying something like 5 illusionary wolves with successful strikes, which made those wolves a lot tougher. But eventually, somebody finished off the one that Glyn had hit, which made its duplicate disappear. And then it was just simple math. The group kept piling on blows, Hananan got another strong blow in. And, all told, they had a pretty good tussle. I believe Vanessa got a bit chewed. Glyn took another nip, which he didn't need because he was still not in perfect shape. So he was rocked pretty hard. Brandel and Crendon did manage to avoid getting injured. Crendon had a beautiful stroke with his rapier to finish off one of the badgers, so he was able to participate in combat. And against the wolves, I believe he even ended one of those too with his rapier. So when he pulls it out, he's pretty good. I was just rolling really luckily against his Vicious Mockery attack, so it's an all or nothing thing. If I succeed, he doesn't hit. So they finish off the 3 wolves. The rest were all illusions. And they kind of came to the conclusion that these wolves were affected by a magical illusion called Mirror Image, which meant that because of the way the magic affects it, you can't actually pick out the one that's real out of the lot. That's how the magic works. So that was disconcerting. They knew that in this land of illusion this might happen. But they continued because you can't go back. Part of the function of the tent. You can't return. You have to keep going forward. So eventually they find a cave. It's a large cave, shallowly full of water, only a couple inches deep. And there's a toad smoking a pipe. Frogs and pipes are kind of a thing in Zila, as it turns out, due to the predilections of one of the more powerful wizards of the group, Alphinius Gu. Within Zila, he prefers that as one of his motifs. So, yes, frog, pipe. They talked to the frog, who didn't give them a great deal of information, but he didn't seem too bothered by them. And they decided to live and let live, so they walked around the frog and continued on. Then they saw what is my favorite piece of art in the whole thing, which is this beautiful, as a matter of fact, I'm here, you're here, I gotta show you this piece of art. Because it is absolutely gorgeous. And it, as I said, all of these scenes were absolutely worthy of sharing and showing you. So, for example, the fungal with the mushrooms, the bridge with the dancing leprechaun, the spooky forest. That's both evil and spooky, I'm sorry. The awesome frog. They love the frog, I think. And then they came to this scene, which to me is just, I love the colors. It's so awesome. Which is this amazing image. The path is now a series of stepping stones going across a lake, seeming to cut it in half. As they went along it, that big serpent that they saw swooped up and gulped them all down. A single gulp took the whole party. They went down, 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 and came out in a dry room, and there the tent flaps. It was kind of like a crazy ride. That magic. It's awesome. So they came out, and they were met by Skizig and Vestia, the two wizards of the senior wizards, the ones who handle the entertainment. And they were, of course, concerned for the group and praised them for their bravery. And immediately, as soon as Vestia saw that they were pretty badly injured, she outed with some healing potions and made sure that everyone got taken care of. Everybody was restored back to full due to the liberal application. Just about. I think Glenn may have still a few scratches because he rolled very poorly. But for the most part, they restored the group, and they rewarded Brandel by giving her an apprentice's ring, which should strengthen her magics up, which is cool. A minor magical item, but a nice one. And the group was very happy with that. They got a little bit of extra fighting experience under their belt, learning to work together, which is cool. And we're ready to continue on. The next step for them was to go to the livestock pens. The livestock pens were, what bad is going to happen there, but they heard an outcry as they were approaching. Now what? Well, it turns out that the troop has a pair of milk cows, and one of them was stuck down a sinkhole. A hole had just opened up and swallowed most of this poor cow. Its head was sticking out. It was mooing urgently, but it's a cow. Cows are pretty dumb and can't really help themselves. And unfortunately, the druid and the ranger in the group were just not able to connect with this cow to get it to calm itself. So they all tried to get out. Brandel did the smart approach. He got a rope under it to use for leverage. Glyn and Vanas just could not get a grip on the mud and manure slick ground to really help. Fortunately, they had Hananan, who basically grabbed the cow by the neck, hooked it under the arm, and suplexed that cow right out of the hole and dropped it next to the hole. So, yeah, rolled a 20. Just, amazing. And it also didn't hurt that Crendon gave him a bit of inspiration for that. That timely inspiration can be really handy, and he's making that effect known. So, the cow was saved. One of the local lads who were tending to the livestock said, "Hey, there's a hole down there, and there's bones." They're like, "Oh, we should look at that." Because they didn't look at the sinkhole until then. So they go look, and sure enough, there's a skull, and there's some more bones. And what looked like they're all kinds of little tunnels intersecting with the sinkhole. And wouldn't you know it, snakes come out. And they start wriggling up and attacking. These are Vertestian vipers. Nasty, nasty poisonous snakes. Individually, not very nasty. But since they come in clutches of, 8 at a time, pretty bad news for any low-level adventurer. So the fight began. And they don't have a dwarf among them, so there's nobody who's innately resistant to poison. So when these snakes bite, they bite hard. Not with their actual fangs, but everyone requires a saving throw versus poison to mitigate some of the damage their venom does. And they were assisted by the 2 cows, because the cows are stuck in the pen too, and they weren't going to just meekly whimper in the corner. These cows were mad. As a matter of fact, one of them, Zila, ended up killing 2 snakes herself. When it seemed for a stretch like all the party could do was swing and hit the ground, they had a really kind of a tough time with these snakes, but they're small, wriggly targets. One hit will kill them, but you got to hit them first. And the group had some success, certainly. They did eliminate all of the snakes in time, but a couple people got bitten again. Glyn got bitten. He made a saving throw, but Glyn's not having the greatest of days right now. And ironically, as a ranger, it's all the natural creatures that have been biting him. Between wolves and badgers and snakes now. He took damage in every fight. He's not really that much of a sucker for damage, but it just wasn't his night. Hananan got bitten again, I believe, and did not make a saving throw, so he got very sick from the venom. But eventually they smote all of these snakes, which is great. It's starting to get dark now, and they kind of investigate down into the hole a little bit more, and Brandell is more curious than any of the other ones. All the others don't want to get into that hole. They don't want to do anything. But she gets down and she looks, and one of the holes is bigger, and it actually has some bones through it. So she starts kind of excavating. She gets a small little pick, and she starts digging through to kind of see more of what's inside. And eventually she clears out a small hole that leads into a larger burrow. She casts her light spell so she can see what's going on inside, and after making the hole a little bit bigger so she can see, she sees that it is a pretty sizable burrow, bigger than most natural creatures in the area would possibly need. As high as 4 feet high and only about 4 feet under the ground, so it's probably fairly unstable, and about 6 feet wide. This isn't something like a fox would make, or skunks, or any other burrowing creatures, so she was a little concerned. A lot of them were thinking that maybe the smugglers might have done that to move their illicit hooch, possibly. Seems like a lot of work, but, maybe. They didn't have any real answers to that. But before they could excavate it out any further, they were all summoned to go and talk to Borag at the main tent. And it was getting dark by this time. They've been digging pretty quick, and as winter is approaching, the days are shorter. So the Sul was beginning to drop, and they went over to go and see what Borag needed. Borag congratulated them because he'd heard about all of their different deeds that they had done, and he knew that they had taken some damage for the troop. They had responded well in the face of various fights, and clearly some of those threats that had come up were nasty, but they were able to hold their own. And they were discreet where they needed to be. They kept the relations between themselves and the town guard kosher. So, all things considered, the troop is better off with the group working together. So he congratulated them all, made sure they were all healthy. They all got healed. Braden came up and he laid down some healing and got mostly Hananan, but also Glyn back up to health. And basically they were told, tomorrow in the morning you have liberty. Do whatever you need. Take care of what you want, but you're going to rest tonight because you can use it. And then tomorrow you'll start refreshed and ready to go. And that, I think, will work better for everybody. So, the group now has that to look forward to as they start the next session. It'll be day 2, the final day of the Carnivalle. They've already interacted with several NPCs. They've had some pretty crazy adventures. But what's up to come? Well, we'll see. Things are going to get even crazier. So, hopefully you enjoyed this. The group seemed to enjoy it immensely. I even made noodle pudding for them, which we tried from an internet recipe. I'm going to tweak the recipe, but it was tasty. They liked it. So that was good. So next time, who knows what craziness I'll come up with, but we'll have something fun to do, and more adventuring in the Darkest Dream. So thank you for joining me. I'm Rob, and this has been my State of the Dungeon address. This was, again, for the game that took place on the 22nd of July. Thank you, and have a good day.